When you leave corporate and start your own consulting or coaching business, no one tells you how to run sales calls. It is a skill that you gain throughout the process of starting your business. Last year, despite the fact that it was my first year of going all in for my coach consulting business, I made a six-figure profit. The main reason why I was able to do that was because I started around 1,000 conversations over the last year. The majority of those through messaging. However, there were roughly probably 200 plus conversations that I ran through sales calls. In this video, I want to break down my framework that I use for sales calls, which can absolutely be applied by anyone who is starting or just started their coach consulting business. These are the principles that I've learned and applied myself throughout the whole year, and that I share with my clients who come to me for business coaching programs. Chapter 1. Ditch the script. Many salespeople, when they coach you on how to run the sales calls, give you a script. I don't quite believe in that, especially if you offer some kind of bespoke high-ticket coaching or consulting. The reason I don't believe in that is because when you follow the script, you ignore the real flow and the natural flow of the conversation that will shape what you will have to ask every next moment. When you start applying scripts, the conversations start to sound robotic and it removes that human aspect of a real conversation. What you need isn't a script, you need a structure. Think of it like this. A script is a movie. Every word is fixed. A structure is kind of like GPS. You know the destination, but the route adjusts based on what's happening in real time. But here is the rough structure that most good sales calls usually cover. Current state, so what's happening right now. Desired state, what they want to achieve instead. The gap, what's currently is blocking them from getting where they want to be. Cost of inaction, what it costs them to stay here. What they've tried, self-attempts, what worked and what didn't work. Commitment and timing. Are they ready to move now or is it someday? Your offer, how you help them close the gap in getting from point A to point B. Objections, what's stopping them from deciding that your offer is exactly what they want to buy. Price and objection. I try to separate and isolate that because then it helps you to understand, is there a problem specifically with the price or is there a problem with your offer? Next steps, close the loop and agree what the next steps would look like. I run my sales calls by usually walking into call with curiosity and honesty. And then I follow the proper conversation flow. The beginning of the conversation would usually sound like a chat you would have with someone during the networking event. I start off by being curious about the problem or the gap that that person is currently experiencing with their business or in life if they come to me for life coaching. And then I would go with the flow and have a natural conversation that would lead to my offer. I think it is important to set the scene at the start with how the conversation is going to go. So when you download my guide below with suggested sales call questions that are prepared for you, you will see that one of the first openings and one of the first kind of sentences is how you can take control of the call is setting the scene of the conversation. So you would say something like that. Great to have you on a call. To give you an idea on how we are going to run this call, we will be doing X, Y, and Z. I would be keen to hear what problem or frustration brings you here today and what you have tried already to overcome it. Towards the end of the call, we'll see whether my offer can help you close that gap. And if you think it's suitable for you, we can then discuss the further step and build a plan how we can work together. And if not, perfectly fine as well. I'm sure you're going to get some value out of it. How does it sound? I think it is also very important to have some kind of honesty around the budget and whether the pricing of your offer is even within the range of the person's expectation. That's why the pre-qualification process is super important here. And I spoke about pre-qualifying your ideal customer and how to do that and what potential steps you can take in my another video that you can find here. As part of the pre-qualification process, your questionnaire or your DMs, you can at least get an idea whether the pricing range of your offer and your services in general is within the expectation of the person who you're talking to. However, a lot of my sales calls actually happened from the calls that were not even set as sales calls, but were framed as networking calls. When I saw that there is an opportunity for me to help this person, I would talk about my offer and the client would sign up either for a power session or my workshop or my full package of services. Chapter 2. Listen to understand. This is where most beginners lose confidence. they are so focused on converting that they spend the whole call thinking about the next question, how to respond, how to overcome objections, how to say it right. And the prospect can feel the tension. The best salespeople listen more than they talk. I think I was listening to one of the interviews from Chris Dorr, and he was saying that 70% of your time should be spent on listening, and only 30% of your time should be spent on talking. A quote that fits perfectly here is Stephen Covey's one: seek first to understand, then to be understood. I think the whole magic lies in active listening. Active listening is when you listen deeply to what the person across the table is talking about. What I mean is that you do not come up with the next question until they finish talking. Majority of people operate at a superficial levels of listening is when you listen to a person talking across the table and you're already thinking about the next question without being fully present and fully focused on what they have to say. But active listening is when you listen till the end without even thinking about the next question. The best evidence whether you are thinking in an active way is whether you have pauses throughout the conversation. Because you will wait for the prospect to finish talking, then pause for some time, coming up with the next question you want to ask based on what they've just told you, and then ask the question. This helps keep the conversation personalized, relevant, and smooth. This will also help you ask the deep follow-up questions. Imagine if you were following the script and the person started talking about something that's really important for them, on something that really concerns them, but you would just follow the script and ask the next question on your list without even appreciating the flow of the conversation. However, what you should be doing is that you should be listening deeply to what they are sharing with you right now, and then asking the deep follow-up questions on that, eventually leading to your offer and how you can help them solve their problem. Chapter 3: Conviction versus convincing. A lot of early stage coaches and consultants think that the whole point of sales calls is to convince your prospect to buy from you, to persuade them about the value of your offer. In reality, it's not about that. It's about showing your conviction that your offer will help them to close the gap they're currently experiencing in their life in the best possible way. And the only person who can help them with that is you. That is why understanding their gap and spending a lot of time at the start of the conversation, curiously asking the questions around their gap and what they've tried so far and what has worked and what hasn't, what's the cost of an action for them, and what the situation would look like if they don't change the situation today, is super important. Because then when you come to the point of talking about your offer and how your offer specifically can help them overcome that problem that they're experiencing, you can tailor the benefits of your offer to the pain points and to the concerns that they already raised with you earlier in the conversation. I think what is also super important is to walk into the call with that kind of with or without energy. What it means is that you're going to be fine with or without this client. I know it's very hard to have that mindset when you have bills to pay and you need money, but without the right mindset, your sales call won't convert. It's like some kind of vicious circle. You don't have clients, you don't have money to pay your bills, so you operate in the scarcity mindset. You walk into the call needy and you repel your clients instead of attracting them because you're pushing way too hard. Then you are again back to square one without having any clients and any money, and the cycle continues. So what you should be doing is breaking that cycle. And I know it's really hard to operate from abundance mindset when you don't have money and you need that client right now. That's why I never recommend quitting your job to start your business without having some plan in place, but better start building your business on this side while having some income coming in. However, if the situation happened to be that way, that you are out of your income and you still have to walk into that call, try to make it work that way, that you do not look and sound and behave needy. The most logical way, of course, to develop that mindset is to have a ton of leads already waiting to work with you. But when you're starting, that's not the case. You have to act in a way as that new identity would have acted. That identity with many clients, with many leads. So I wouldn't say it's fake until you make it kind of thing, but it's some kind of training your subconscious to break that cycle of scarce behaviors and start behaving in a way that the person with a huge least would have behaved. Chapter 4. Never object to objections. I think this is a huge one. Our natural response to try to object to whatever objections prospects might have. In reality, what you should be doing is completely the opposite. When you start objecting, you start creating more friction and you are reinforcing their negative emotion around that potential objection. Instead, what I do is that I embrace it. So how it works is that when a person tries to object, some parts of my offer, saying, for example, I just don't think it's going to work for me, which I get quite often. I say, I hear your concern that it might not work for you. I would be curious to hear what exactly you mean. Because very often, when people say that something is not going to work for them, they don't doubt you or your offer, they doubt themselves. So, what I want to hear from them is what exactly they mean when they say this is not going to work for them. Is it because they don't believe they can execute? Is it because they don't think the structure of the program is right for them? If I feel they are going around in circles, I would ask them directly, do you feel unsure about the program or unsure about your ability to execute right now? And if they say, oh, yes, I'm not confident that I will be able to do all of that, you try to reframe. That's what I always say, for example. Isn't that the whole point why you're coming to me in the first place? Because if you were confident that it's going to work and if you were confident about what you need to do, you would have done that anyway already. But you're coming to me to support you along the way. And that's the whole point. I'm going to help you execute with structure and support. Then stop and let it land. The main goal with every objection, and I'm talking about all the objections but the pricing ones, because we are going to deal with the pricing objection a bit later separately. But the main goal about all objections is to learn to reposition your values so you can stand out in the market and also to debunk those potential myths that they have created for themselves. And of course, everything will depend on the quality of your leads that come to the calls with you. If you've done the proper steps on the pre-qualifying your leads and making sure the leads who come for the calls are high quality, it will be quite easy to overcome a lot of those objections because those objections are not real objections, so to say. But if the quality of the leads is not very high, you might really be dealing with some objections like timing or commitment. These might not be the people who are really committed to start working with you right now, or people who are even keen to invest any money. So I think the pre-qualification step is as equally important as the call itself. Chapter 5, never justify your price. Firstly, when you mention your price, stop talking. Pause for a few seconds. I think I read it from Alex Hormozi that the pause needs to be around 9 seconds long. Do not try to rush in any way to justify your price. This is a natural reaction of the person, especially if you're just starting trying to prove that the price you're charging is valid. What you should be doing is completely the opposite. You mention the price and you make a pause because a person needs a few seconds to process the information about the cost, especially if it's a high ticket price and high ticket service. Then wait for them to start saying something or asking questions. Of course, if they do ask you a question or if they start talking, do not stay silent. You continue the conversation in a natural flow. But if they're just keeping that 2-3 seconds of silence, bear with them. Let them process the information. Do not rush them through that stage. Once they start talking, depending on what kind of path they take, you can then continue the pricing conversation. But never justify your price. What I mean is that sometimes you will get asked a question. Oh, isn't that too expensive? So what I do in those cases, I mirror back to them their question. I say, too expensive? And I'll let them explain what they mean. The reason why I say we have to clarify that is because we don't quite understand what they mean by saying it's too expensive. Is it because they don't have the budget for that kind of service? Or is it because they're comparing your service to competitors? Or is it because they truly don't see the value in your offer for that price? Mirroring that question back to them and letting them explain gives you more information that you can then work with a bit later on the call. Again, it doesn't mean you are going to justify your price, but it gives you the information on what they're thinking, what they're going through, or what you can reframe. Or you can say something expensive in what way? Or what do you mean? Now, if they say to you that they can't afford that, that's too expensive for them to pay for the service, you move into the conversation of showing them the cost of inaction and move them from cost-based thinking into results-based thinking. Here is what I mean with an example. Let's say you're a learning and development expert helping companies improve their retention rate and increase the engagement score and save money from hiring a full-time position. They shared with you that they have a huge turnover rate. The engagement scores are really low and the acquisition cost of attracting a new talent is really high because they have to retrain them and onboard them, and every time the person leaves, it means that they have to replicate the cost. So you say to them, totally understand that it might sound expensive, but let me ask you this. Is it more expensive to invest 20,000 over the next 3 months to improve the retention and productivity that I can help you with? Or to keep losing people, keep hiring, keep onboarding, and stay stuck in that cycle? What do you think the cost of doing nothing for the next 3 months will be? Very often people don't quite think about that in that kind of shape and form. But in reality, what you're going to do is show them the perspective or what options they have. And very often, if you truly know that your offer is going to help them close that gap and solve the problem, it's actually more expensive for them not to take you up on that offer than to opt into one. And in fact, you can apply this strategy to all type of sales. Chapter 6. Always close the loop. The best way to finish the call is to agree on the next steps. With B2C calls, if the call goes well, you can then end up saying, shall I send you the pay link right now and we can proceed with payment? If they need time to think about it, I usually give around 24 hours for people to think through the decision. It all depends on how the conversation went, how you overcame those objections, the timing, the cost of inaction that we spoke about earlier. But I always say, in reality, we all make decisions within the first 7 seconds. So people don't need too long to decide whether they want to work with you or not. But sometimes people still want to think about it or consult with someone before spending a significant amount of money. And it's especially relevant if you offer high ticket services. So I would say something like that to them. I would love to follow up with you within the next 24 hours, as I don't like to leave a lot of things hanging out in the air, open for long. Do you think you would be able to get back to me tomorrow with your answer? And I would wait for them to reply. This is some kind of psychological commitment that people are making. So I think it's important to give them a chance to reply. I would send them a quick message and follow up with them next day. And if they don't reply, the answer is probably no at this stage. But I might still follow up with them once or twice after that. With B2B sales, the cycles are usually longer and you might have another call. What I always do is that I agree on the next step on this current call. And very often I would say, do you want me to send you my offer proposal that we just briefly spoke about? Very often the answer would be yes. And then I say, absolutely no problem. It will be in your mailbox within the next 5 days. And I always stick to what I said I'm going to do. If it's within 5 days, it's going to be done within 5 days. It's just always better to underpromise and overdeliver than another way around. I will also book a next call with them at the end of the first call. I would say, shall we look in another quick follow-up call for 15-30 minutes to discuss the proposal and what the next steps might look like for you and for your company? Would Thursday after 3 p.m. or Friday after 12 p.m. 2 weeks from today work for you? So try to always give people 2 options and give the timing, the range, because you are doing the thinking for them. You make the next step easier for them. And every next step should be very easy for them to take. It needs to be a micro step. It should not be like a huge decision for them to make. That's why I always give them options of the time they can choose for the next follow-up. To wrap up this video, I want to encourage you to keep running those calls and to keep training yourself, because even if you watch hundreds of videos on how to do that and learn from the best training and the best people, salespeople, your experience and your expertise in running those calls comes from practice. The more calls you run, the better you will get in those. Don't frame them as sales calls and frame them as networking calls initially, even if you feel weird or uncomfortable, or if you know you're going to be asking weird questions. That's okay. It's all feels uncomfortable when we start. Try to record your sales calls if possible. If you work with a coach, send them those recordings for review, because every good business coach needs to review your sales calls. That's what I do for my clients. Many people try to avoid sales calls, and if your preferred way of selling is through the Google Doc or through message, that's fine, and especially if it's not very expensive service. But I truly believe that you can't sell big deals just from a message. You will need to have a conversation at some stage, and you'd better be prepared for it. As they say, you never know when the opportunity might come, but you'd better be prepared and well rehearsed for it. As always, rooting for you, and I'll see you next week on the other side. With care, Anna.